This is One on One. I want to introduce you to Dr. John Brennan, who is the 2014 St. Patrick's Day Parade Grand Marshal in Newark. This is the 79th annual St. Patrick's Day Parade in Newark. It's being held on March 14th. This is a big deal.
It's a great deal. It began in 1916 with Mayor Giblin, and with a couple years off during World War II, it's really progressed to now a major event in Newark and a lot of fun. As you know, Newark's got such diversity, and this Irish diversity is a very important part of its history.
And you have to be Irish to be the Grand Marshal.
You have to be Irish to be the Grand Marshal.
Dr. Brennan, by the way, Dr. Brennan, for those of you who do not know, is the president and CEO of Newark Beth Israel Medical Center. Prove your ethnic, background, your Irish background. Go ahead. Where's your family from?
Well, my mother's from, last name Grogan, from the area of Dublin, and my father from Kilkenny, last name Brennan. My great-grandparents came over. One set ended up in Canada and moved their way down to Syracuse, New York. The other set came in through Manhattan and moved their way up to Syracuse. But it's a great story because my father's father was a farmer and then was on one of the belts for Chrysler putting cars together. And my mother's father was a lawyer. So we got this spectrum of family that goes quite a distance and very hardworking, both sides.
It's interesting. For folks who don't appreciate or understand, I know we're showing footage throughout this segment of the St. Patrick's Day Parade. We were there last year in Newark. Patrick Dunnigan over at the Gibbons Law Firm was the Grand Marshal last year. We were out there filming it. It is very exciting, and the crowd is very enthusiastic. And I know a lot of your colleagues from the Barnabas Health are going to be there as well. What do you think it means to your colleagues to have their colleague be the Grand Marshal?
I think it's great. It is a lot of fun. But we do bring money into 4 charities, well, several charities, but 4 important charities. One is all familiar with you, St. Benedict's.
St. Benedict's Prep, right?
Great organization. Newark Library, another great organization. And then the Matthew J. Moorhan Concussion and Heart Screening Program.
At St. Barnabas.
At St. Barnabas, throughout the system. And then our Burn Foundation, which is very important to a lot of the folks, a lot of Irish heritage in the fire department and the police department. And unfortunately, some of these firemen end up in that burn center. So very important to us.
John, let me ask you, in terms of keeping traditions alive, in fact, the theme of this whole parade is, in fact, keeping the tradition alive. And you'll be there with your wife, Mary Beth, and your children. Question, in terms of traditions, when growing up in Newark, as you know, the Columbus Day Parade that went up Bloomfield Avenue, for people who watch the show who grew up in that area, you know, the Columbus Day Parade was such a big deal. Went throughout Bloomfield Avenue. It started up on Broad Street downtown and went up into Belleville and up into Bloomfield, but all the way through Newark. It doesn't exist anymore. But the idea that the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Newark is still there is a big deal, isn't it?
Oh, it's a tradition. You know, it was, what an honor. My wife and I were sitting at Rod's having dinner.
Which is talk about a landmark downtown Newark.
Right, and so the phone rings and I answered it. My wife wasn't happy with that. And it was Assemblyman Giblin.
Tom Giblin.
Tom Giblin, and he said, you know, we vetted you and we want you, would you consider? By the way, we should
let folks know that Tom Giblin is the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I mean, he lives it every day.
Every day, and he, quite an organization. We went to one of his fundraisers a couple of nights ago, and it's just amazing. Talk about tradition and really looking to help the small foundations. That's what his organization was doing.
So the call comes in and says?
And so we're just about to drink my glass of wine, and the call comes in and asks me, and I was like unbelievably thrilled, because it really does, as you were saying before, tie these generations together. My parents, very strong Irish heritage. My kids, very strong Irish heritage. Brings that whole family together. It's just great.
It's so interesting. For a lot of your children, how old are your children?
Almost 30. I got a daughter, Kelly. April 5th will be 30, 26 and 16.
So the question becomes, for children of that generation and even younger kids, do you think it's harder for them to appreciate the value of ethnic traditions and what it means to some of us and our parents?
I think it does, and I think this is something that brings it back. But it's not just the parade. It's all the events that occur around the parade, and really digging into the history and understanding the roots from where you came. And my children are much more appreciating of that now that I'm involved in this, and it became more of a spotlight for them.
What'd you say to them?
I said I'm going to be in the Irish parade, and because
you're not going to be in the parade, you're the Grand Marshal.
Well, I had to be careful how I started it off. I wanted to start it off and kind of build it up. And I really wanted them to understand what it was about. It was about celebrating that heritage. It wasn't about just the parade. It was this celebration of Irish heritage, which is going to happen that entire week prior to the parade.
Just so folks can appreciate this, whether they're Irish or not, what does, you talk about the Irish heritage a lot, what does being Irish, I mean, I often think about what being Italian-American means to me, particularly coming from a neighborhood in Newark where I grew up there was, I hate to say this, but I know you've heard this before, there was one Irish kid. You've heard this before, right? In a lot of Italian neighborhoods, there was always always one Irish kid, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way. It was just,
no.
They were mostly Italian neighborhoods, and maybe there was, an Irish neighborhood, there was one Italian kid or whatever.
Right.
But in Newark, it always struck me that was so much a part of my life, and grandparents, et cetera, and that meant so much to me. What does being Irish mean to you?
Being Irish means, it means a lot of things, but one thing that is real clear for my family, it's hardworking. They came from my father being, a farmer in Canada and making his way down here, really trying to make a life, and my other grandfather becoming a lawyer. Hardworking, nothing was given to them. And I think we share that. I think whether Italian, Jewish, Irish, I think that heritage, and that's what we want to give to our kids. This is hard work that you do to accomplish.
That's a lot of what Newark Beth is about.
Exactly. A lot of diversity at Newark Beth.
I want to remind folks, it is on March 14th, the 79th annual Newark St. Patrick's Day Parade, and our good friend Dr. John Brennan from Newark Beth is the Grand Marshal, and it's going to be a great day. And congratulations, Mr. Grand Marshal.
Great. Can I just thank Michael Byrne? Michael Byrne is the gentleman that's really putting the operations into this and has done an amazing job.
And once again, all the money goes to 4 wonderful charities. Thank you, John.
Great. Steve, thank you.
You got it. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Russell Berry Foundation, Cone Resnick, the Fidelco Group, Fedway Associates, New Jersey Sharing Network, Kessler Foundation, and by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, founded by the Jewish community. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System.